Hey, check it. Put the place up.
What's going on, folks, and welcome into Sports Tree's preview show. I'm Connor Roundtree, your host, and we have a special guest today. He's back in action. It is Dr. Darce, MMA, one of the best handicappers in the game, one of my favorite people to talk with over Twitter and break down fights. And now he's live, bringing you guys some of his best looks for UFC 291, with the BMF belt on the line. Doc, before we hop into this, what is your opinion of the BMF belt?
I think that regardless of my thoughts on it, I couldn't think of two gentlemen more capable of wearing such a strap. I mean, if you had to pick two, there aren't two much better than these guys.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that one. The shoe does fit with the Gaethje and Dustin Poirier. They're both some of the baddest men on the planet. It definitely is a gimmick fight. The belt is a gimmick. But the belt is a gimmick. The fight itself is going to be absolutely awesome. These two guys met back in 2018, but we will break that down for you at the end of this. We're going to start at the bottom of the card and work our way up. And first up, it's Miranda Maverick versus Priscilla Cachuera. Now, Maverick has the clear path to victory with her wrestling, averaging over 2 takedowns per 15 minutes of octagon time. Cachuera, she struggles to stay on her feet. That should be the difference. However, at Dash 350, there's just the risk factor doesn't equate to a reasonable bet in my mind. So I'm not playing this fight. I'm staying far away from this fight, but the pick has to be Miranda Maverick because of the path to victory with her grappling. But Priscilla Cachuera, she hits hard and she's a dog. So, women's MMA, anything can happen. Doc, any reads on this fight?
I agree with what you said. Maverick is a tough egg to crack. She, she's shown enormous potential in the past. She had a little bit of bad luck, the Macy Barber, where I think pretty much everyone, including the UFC, basically admitted she won
that fight. Yes, won that fight.
And then, she gets hooked up with Erin Blanchfield. No shame in losing to her. I believe Erin Blanchfield is a future champ. And then she lost to Jasmine Jasdavicius a few months ago, but or was it
Canada's finest? One of Canada's finest. Can't be mad about that.
Absolutely. And like you said, Cachuera has some pop. I used to fade her every time, but she's kind of proven me wrong. She has caught some people. I agree with you. I would pick Maverick. There's not really a play in terms of picking a side, in my opinion. I do like fight does not go the distance as a play, probably a sweet parlay piece, because I don't think this is going the distance, whether it ends with a Cachuera TKO or Maverick by submission. I don't think it's seeing the cards.
Yeah, I feel like Maverick's either going to take this down, pin Cachuera to the mat, and eventually hunt the sub, or it could be a club and sub on the other side of things, just because of the size difference. I believe Cachuera stands 5'7", and Maverick only 5'2", so I think Maverick could have success at a lighter weight class, but as for now, for this matchup, I'm staying very far away with it, but I do like the read of it not going to distance. Moving on up the card, Matthew Semmelsberger versus Uros Medic. Now, I'm all over Semmelsberger in this one. I got on him earlier in the week at Dash 180. I believe he opened at Dash 140, and people bet that down to Dash 180. Now he's Dash 210 and 225 on some sites. And I love his size. I love his toughness, his power, his durability. And Uros Medic is coming up a weight class on short notice and is fresh off of left-hand surgery. He hasn't fought in a year. Well, he is a precise striker. I just think the power, the persistence of Semmelsberger is going to just weigh on him. And I think the toughness, size, and pressure from Semi the Jedi is going to be the difference here. So I love Matthew Semmelsberger in this spot, and I already have a couple of units on him. Doc, how do you see this one playing out?
See, I did not get in on this early enough. I don't like the line anymore. I think that's too much. If anything, at this point, I would maybe bet Medic, but I can't get comfortable with that, but good on you for getting in at minus 180.
Yeah, no, I like him in a parlay spot too. I'm pretty confident in Semi the Jedi in this one, just because of the size factor. I'm not sure how good Medic is going to look, right? This fight is going to be at elevation in Utah, in Salt Lake City. And, coming off of an injury, coming in on short notice, what's his camp been like? Is he constantly training? Where I know Matthew Semmelsberger is just always in shape, and he's just always going to bring the dog fight. bring that dog to the fight. So I really like Semmelsberger in this spot. Moving on up the card, CJ Vergara versus Vinicius Salvador. Now, I think this is CJ Vergara all day. Dash 165. I have him parlayed with Matthew Semmelsberger. I think Vergara is tougher than a $2 stake, and he knows how to grind opponents down with pressure, volume striking, and then maybe mix in some timely takedowns. Vinicius Salvador, yes, he can hit hard, and I think he will be very dangerous for the first half of that first round. But after that, I just see the tide turning for Vergara and him just letting loose on Vinicius Salvador into the later rounds and as the clock ticks on. Doc, what's your read on this one?
I think it has potential to be an extremely fun fight. Both guys hit really hard, and if it stays on the feet, we could be in for a real treat. I actually put a unit down on Salvador for the plus money. I don't feel strongly either way. I think it's a pretty even fight, so I took the plus money.
Yeah, no, that's definitely the way to do it. That kind of makes me a little nervous here because I'm pretty high on Vergara, just his workhorse ability. You know, the short notice. I'm just not sold on Salvador yet to go into the later rounds. I think he could potentially get the early finish. We've seen CJ get rocked many times before, but he always rallies, and I love it. Between the Semmelsberger and the Vergara, my reads basically I'm going with those guys because they bring the dog to the fight, and they push in the later rounds, and they're never truly out of it. So we're going against each other on that one. So I'm sweating a little bit already. Let's see what you have for Jake Matthews versus Darius Flowers. Now, I like Jake Matthews in this spot. Flowers hasn't fought in 10 months. He's coming in on short notice, and he has a limited skill set. Yes, he is a former pro boxer, so you know he's going to have quick hands. But we saw Jake Matthews get dropped, 4 times? At least once a round against Semmelsberger and keep fighting. I think Matthews can survive the early barrage and turn this fight into a battle of attrition, a war of attrition, in which he will win rounds 2 and 3 and win this possibly by decision. The opening line of dash 270 doesn't really entice me a lot. There is some money coming in on Flowers. I believe that Matthews opened up around dash 325. It's been bet down to 270 now. So there is some money coming in on Flowers, but I think my best play for this one is wait for the first round to play out, or parlay Matthews if you really think he's going to get the finish early. But wait for that first round to play out, and then bet Jake Matthews on the live line, because I think that's going to carry tremendous value entering the later rounds.
Yeah, I admit falling victim to the hype after Jake Matthews beat down Andre Fialho. He looked very impressive when he did so. I mean, he looked like he was a future world champ when he did so. But I think that we've kind of come around to the fact that Fialho is probably going to let everybody do that to him. Fialho is just not very good. That's not to take away from the win for Jake Matthews. So I was very bullish on him in the fight with Semmelsberger and was kind of let down. I actually bet really big on Jake Matthews after seeing what he did to Fialho. I think that Flowers, he's a DWCS alum. I don't believe he's fought since being on the Contender Series. That always gives me pause, but I know he had some impressive victories in LFA against people no one's ever heard of. So how much stock do I really put into that? I don't know, but as you said, when it opened up what it did, I bet Flowers immediately because I thought the line was too wide.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I fell victim to Matthew Semmelsberger there in the Jake Matthews fight as well. I just thought he would be more crisp on the feet, have the cleaner strikes, and have the opportunity and the ability to take that fight to the mat. And I understand where you're coming from, because if you're not taking Matthew Semmelsberger down, are you going to take advantage of your grappling in this matchup where you have a clear advantage against Darius Flowers? I'm not sure. But I do like Jake Matthews to win this fight. I just think he's the more well-rounded fighter. He's fought the better brand of competition. And again, Darius Flowers coming in on short notice, hasn't fought in 10 months. And again, I think the altitude could play a huge factor in these fights for the guys coming in on short notice.
100%.
I believe 4,000 feet above sea level.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I feel like we should watch the early fights. I'm not on a lot of fights not to go decision or to end before the final cards. If you recall the last fight card in Salt Lake City, everyone was gassing. I mean, we had the Borachina and Luke Rockhold fight where
That was
I
hilarious.
would have bet everything on that fight not going the distance, and I nearly did. And then it went the distance because both guys gassed. I mean, Rockhold was begging to get out of there, and Borrachina just didn't have what it took to get him out of there because he was so gassed. So I think that'll be something interesting to watch on the early fights to see how prepared the fighters are to deal with the altitude, because it was certainly a factor last time, a huge factor.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I think it's going to be a huge factor in some of the fights later down the card, but
I
not
agree.
so much a factor in the next one. Roman Kopylov versus Claudio Ribeiro. And I like Kopylov. I like him a lot. He's got a crisp jab from that southpaw stance, loves to throw that cross, very, very tight boxing. And what I've noticed on tape is that Claudio Ribeiro, he has power, but he throws a lot of looping shots. And then Kopylov has a 60% striking defense. He holds his hands up, and I think those looping shots versus those straight shots, the straight shots are going to land. And I also think that Kopylov has an advantage on the mat. So I'm putting Roman Kopylov in essentially every parlay that I have this week. Doc, how do you see this one going?
Well, there are two things that you can find out very easily about Roman Kopylov just by looking at his Tapology page. He's Russian, and his last name ends in V. When you have that combination, if you bet that side every single time in any MMA fight, you'd be adding units. So I don't have much here, but I agree with you. I think Kopylov is the pick.
Yeah, it's just a parlay spot for me at Dash 225. I don't think there's a lot of value for an outright bet, but again, just a sweet parlay spot in a fight where I just think he has all the advantages. And again, I think it's going to be a stand-up battle, and those jabs from the southpaw stance too. I don't think Ribeiro handles the southpaws too well. I just think that's going to leave a lot of openings. The guys are going to be going toe-to-toe with the opposite stances, and man, those straight power shots are going to box the nose off of Claudio Ribeiro. Moving on up the card, Gabriel Bonfim, one of the biggest favorites of the card, going against Trevin Giles. Bonfim, perfect 14-0 with 14 finishes, 11 of those coming by way of submission. While there are some holes in his game, I don't think Trevin Giles is the man to expose those fatal flaws. I think this is a great setup fight to kind of put Bonfim on the map after his brother lost pretty handily to Benoit Saint-Denis. I think this is a good spot to help juice up the family name again. Doc, how do you see this one playing out?
I made a lot of money on Benoit Saint-Denis beating his brother, and I was taking a look. Trevin Giles is not the guy to get there for me. I think you're right. I think this is a squash match for Bonfim, and I think he likely rolls. The price is not intriguing enough for me, so I'm staying off this fight.
Yeah, it's just one of those spots where you can put maybe Bonfim in with Kopylov, with a Vergara, or with the Semmelsberger for me at least. Maybe mix kind of a parlay spot in with these early cards. I think the single bets are definitely for the main card, where it's just the value for the prelims is just, it's all the undercards. It's all about the parlay spots for me. But then we move into my first underdog pick of the night. I'm very interested to see what you have for this. The Black Beast Derek Lewis versus Marcus Rogério de Lima. Now, I like Derek Lewis here. I know he's lost 4 out of his last 5, but he's been fighting some of the best heavyweights in the world, and he's got the 2-inch reach advantage. And for de Lima to get inside, he's going to have to get those takedowns. He's going to have to deal with the reach of Derek Lewis, and just ask Curtis Blades how that turned out. He got starched. So I don't think de Lima's been fighting the best guys in the world. Derek Lewis his number and his time could be up here, but at plus 180, I'm taking a shot on the KO King to end this fight. I think he can clip de Lima. And, Derek Lewis is also a big guy, and he's hard to hold down. Like, Sergey Spivak is a different beast. I think he's a much better grappler than de Lima. And, Derek Lewis, I was watching the pressers this week. He said he was sick going into that fight. He had a bad weight cut. He passed out during his weight cut. He left it to the last minute. He had to cut 25 pounds in 3 days. So he was just drinking water and eating just snacks. So I think it's a healthier weight cut this time. And I like Derek Lewis. And I like the power. And I think it could be a good night for de Lima in this one.
I love me some Black Beast. I can't really abide what's happened to him recently. This is a stay-off fight for me, but just because I don't want to bet against Derek Lewis. He's served as a measuring stick for the entire division for years now. Unfortunately, I don't think that he quite has it anymore. I do think he's washed. I don't know that de Lima is a guy that you can get behind, really. But it's at altitude. I think that Derek Lewis could potentially gas during the walkouts. I mean, it's going to be tough for Derek Lewis, but I will be rooting for him 100%. If I had to make a Tapology pick, I would probably pick De Lima. I'm staying off this, but I will be rooting hard for you to win your bet on Derek Lewis because I love the Black Beast.
Yeah, well, here's the thing, right? Usually what I recommend in the smart bet is bet on the guy with more paths to victory. De Lima has nasty leg kicks, vicious leg kicks. He could win this fight via TKO, doctor stoppage, or he could win it via submission. He has more paths to victory, but I like that you brought up the altitude with Derek Lewis because we've seen him knock Volkov out with 10 seconds left in the fight. That power transfers later to fights, and I've seen De Lima slow down. So I think as the fight goes on, the harder shots are going to start to land, and they're going to find that soft spots, find that temple on De Lima. And I think that Lewis could get another upset knockout against a grappler here. And again, it's not so much that I'm confident in it. Obviously, we just said De Lima has more paths to victory, but Derek Lewis, the KO king, I mean, you got to get close to take him down, and that is one guy I would never want to get punched by. That would end my bloodline.
Like you just mentioned, he does have power late, even when he's gassed. I mentioned Paulo Costa, he just didn't have it to knock out Luke Rockhold when he was gassed. We've seen Derek Lewis, his power still is there when he's completely gassed. He has looked dead in the water and knocked people out. So I do agree with you on that for sure.
Yeah, it's the Volkov fight that stands out in my mind. I was at that fight live, the McGregor-Habib card, and I had a ticket with Derek Lewis on it, and I was almost about to rip it up with about 20 seconds left in the fight, and then he knocks him out with 10 seconds left. I was like, thank goodness I did not rip that to pieces. Moving on to the main card here, Doc.
That is my favorite walkout in our favorite walkout song in all of MMA. It's Drop by I can't remember who it's even by, but I love it.
I don't remember who it's by, but the fact that he's listening to Top Drop and then he takes his shorts off after the fight is just classic Derek Lewis. The guy is just a master with the microphone. Moving on to the main card now, Doc. This is one where I think altitude is going to play a massive difference. I'm taking Stephen Wonderboy Thompson to win this fight. Yes, he's 40 years old, but he moves like a 29-year-old. Michel Pereira is going to carry the power early, but I've seen him gas. And I think Wonderboy can dip in and out of range. I don't think this is going to be a grappling matchup. I see a lot of people taking Pereira because they think he can take Wonderboy down. You have to be pretty darn good to take Wonderboy down. He's defended takedowns against Tyrone Woodley, one of the best wrestlers at the time in the welterweight division. Obviously, we saw him taken down and controlled in some recent fights, but I don't think that Pereira is on that level. And then on the feet, I just think Wonderboy outclasses him for the second and third round after maybe dropping the first. I like Wonderboy via decision at -143. I've already put a couple shekels down on that, and again, it's because of the fact that they're fighting at 4,327 feet above sea level. I do think Wonderboy has the cardio, and then I think he has the striking to outpoint Michel Pereira here. But Pereira has that awkward knockout style. We've seen Wonderboy get starched by Anthony Pettis jumping off the cage with that awkward kind of style. So there is a path to victory there. Doc, which side of this are you on? Of the Rubik's Cube are you on here?
I'll tell you, well, I think it's going to be a fun fight, or at least has potential to be. Wonderboy is always a joy to watch. He's very technically sound, one of the best in the game in that regard. I will say that if Michel Pereira's fight IQ could be counted on, I would pick him in a second. Unfortunately, he has some of the worst fight IQ that I can even imagine. I mean, you never know what kind of acrobatic move he's going to try and pull off. I think that the path would be to get Wonderboy down on the ground. I doubt he utilizes that path. I think he'll try and style as he always does, and I don't think it's going to go very well. I would lean towards the more technically sound fighter and something like that, where they're trying to put on a show. I could see somebody betting Pereira because of the plus money. I couldn't get there. I think Wonderboy is the play here.
Yeah, I'm even confident enough to bet on Wonderboy. Again, it might even be a live betting spot if they do get out of the first round. And Pereira, I just don't know. Is he going to do cartwheels down? And he might be gassed before the opening bell. He's always dancing. He's jumping around during his walkout. I love that you brought up the fight IQ because it's non-existent. It really isn't there. And now you're going up against one of the most technically sound strikers in the history of mixed martial arts. Like a karate stylist. I really think that Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is, if he can survive that first round, is going to style on Michel Pereira. And I think that could be enough, like the Jake Matthews spot. If he can survive, I think there's going to be great value on him going into those later rounds.
Is there anything more fun than when someone dominates round one, getting on the opposite person in between rounds? That's one of my favorite bets to make in all of MMA.
Yeah, no, when like you kind of feel, you're like, okay, I can feel the momentum coming. You lock it in, you crack a wobbly pop, and you're like, all right, let's go. You start yelling at the TV, you start cheering hard, and then they end up getting the finish late in the third round, and you just go, yes, I did that. Thank you. I did that. Well, hopefully all of our listeners and users will ride that with us. We'll be tweeting and have everything on our website for you guys on sportsfree.ca throughout the card. And just stay tuned. We're going to break down this entire card for you guys. We're coming down to the final 4 fights here. Michael Chiesa versus Kevin Holland. I'm going to let you take this one away, Doc. I'm staying away from this. I see it's the classic striker versus grappler. I think Michael Chiesa is very cage smart. I think he can just backpack Kevin Holland. I also see Kevin Holland starching a much smaller Michael Chiesa on the feet, and every fight starts on the feet. So I'm staying well away from this, but I'd like to pick your brain here. I
will admit that I've never really been that high on Chiesa. And we haven't seen him in the cage since 2021 after coming off consecutive losses to Luque and Sean Brady. And Kevin Holland is one of the most exciting fighters there is to watch. We just mentioned fight IQ. Kevin Holland has shown some shaky fight IQ in the past, but I think he's getting better in that regard. He's doing less talking in the cage. That was one of his main issues. He was getting taken down and he was talking from his back. And you're not trying to get up. You're sitting there trying to bust jokes. You need to get up because he was just, he just couldn't get off his back in his past fights. He has gotten better at the takedown defense. I think he's improved everywhere. I do like the move to welterweight. I think it's been better for him. I'm interested to see how Holland deals with the altitude. That's my question here. That's my question on a lot of people, because the altitude really messed with people last time. I mean, I think that if Leon hadn't miraculously won that, Leon gassed in the first round of that fight. And had he not knocked out Kamaru Usman at the end, I think the story for the card is how everybody gassed. But you know how these things go. If the main event is fireworks, you pretty much forget everything else that happens. I mean, you and I don't forget, but the average person forgets. I'm going to pick Holland here, and I'm going to go even further. I'm going to pick him by submission, and I'm going to say that it's going to be a Darce.
Wow, Dr. Darce calling his shot with the Darce choke. Now, can you find that prop anywhere? Is there a prop for that, like the specific submission?
I don't know that there is a prop, and if there is, I'm not on the book that has it. I did pick him by submission, but I would love to get it on it by Darce. I'm sure it'd be like, what do you think it would be, plus 10,000 or something? Like that?
It would be insane, especially against a guy with the credentials on the ground of a Chiesa. And I like that you're actually doing the submission, because sometimes Chiesa, especially in that Luque fight, he gets too comfortable on the ground. And then, boom, he just, I got it to the ground. I'm safe. This is my zone. This is where I operate. I got my black belt. And then next thing you know, Luque has him tapping, has his head turning.
How did he lose? What kind of a choke was that he lost by? Do you remember?
I actually do not remember. Was that a Darce as well?
It was a Darce.
It was a Darce choke. Wow, Dr. Darce on the show calling his shot. Absolutely love it. All right, folks, look out for Kevin Holland. Yeah. I think Kevin Holland, he's been competing more. I actually think the altitude could favor him due to the time off from Michael Chiesa. But what I am worried about is this Chiesa fight's a really boring fight and backpacks him. Yeah, because I could see that happening. And Holland gets frustrated. Holland gets frustrated. He starts to talk because he is frustrated, like we've seen before. That's just the one thing keeping me away from betting Kevin Holland. If the underdog money was on Holland, then I would be taking the shot. But
totally understand.
we'll see what the weigh-ins look like, if they get some beef going. But as of now, I'm staying away. But I love that pick for you. I love the submission, and I might just follow you to battle in that one. Now, a guy that I will not follow in the battle. I still do love him. I have all the respect for him, and I feel bad if I were to bet against him, is Tony Ferguson. He's going up against Bobby Green, and the value simply isn't there to bet on Bobby Green, so it almost makes me want to bet Tony Ferguson, but he's lost 5 consecutive fights. I think Justin Gaethje changed the trajectory of his career. That, like, once he landed that uppercut on Gaethje in that fight during COVID, you know, I think he thought he had won, and then Gaethje just comes back, answers the bell, and just eats him alive. So I don't think Bobby Green is a spring chicken by any means, but he has excellent boxing, excellent counter striking, and I think this is Bobby Green's fight to lose, but I'm not betting it because I'd like to see Tony Ferguson win, and the value isn't there.
All right, here's my Salt Lake City special. Tony Ferguson by decision. Here's why. Ferguson has an elite gas tank. If he can survive the first round, that's where all the danger is, in my opinion. I think that if he can survive the first round, it is a brilliant live betting spot. Another thing to mention about this, since it is a pay-per-view, they will be in the corners during the between rounds. They're not going to commercial like they are on these Apex cards. So you'll be able to see if Bobby Green is sitting on the stool and if he's gassed, if he's breathing heavily. You don't have to worry about that with Tony Ferguson. Tony Ferguson is almost certainly not going to gas out. I agree with you. Everything in your brain wants to tell you this is Bobby Green's fight to lose, like you said. But Tony Ferguson, that elite gas tank, and I want to believe. Plus, the plus money, like you said, the line is too wide. If it was a little more narrow, maybe you get on Bobby Green. But Tony Ferguson plus 650 by decision. That's me. I'm in on it, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, I don't think he's finishes Bobby Green. I just don't think he has the strength, but he could definitely style on him. Like Tony Ferguson's awkward striking Tony Ferguson's one of the greatest mixed martial artists from a pure I'm going to punch you in the face in ways that you don't see it coming standpoint that we've seen in UFC history. He is a masterclass technician of finding openings, creating openings, setting traps, and executing on those traps. So with Bobby, I think he's levels above Bobby Green in that sense. So I like where you're coming from. I'm just, man, I want Tony to win. I'm cheering for you. I may lay some
betting with my heart more than my head here, but I love me some Tony Ferguson. But I also don't think Tony is going to stand there in danger against Bobby Green. I think that that's something that someone could do if they're gassed. That's why I think that Bobby Green will gas. That's what I'm banking on. I think Bobby Green is going to gas, and that it's going to largely be boring for the second half of the fight. And I'm hopeful that they just lay around and forget about the world, and it's a 29-28 for our boy Tony Ferguson.
Absolutely love the call. And remember, he's got the bigger cage to get on his bike and work with, too. Same thing with Wonder Boy. Same thing with all the guys we're talking about, the altitude coming in. They have the bigger cage to work with. This is not at the Apex. All right, Doc. Time for the co-main event. This should be a banger. You have the legendary Polish power in Jan Blachowicz going up against Alex Pereira. And I think there's a few questions here. One, will Jan Blachowicz be able to replicate what he did to Israel Adesanya? He is 3-0 against lightweight or middleweights moving up to light heavyweight. Two, will Pereira be more durable at 205 because he's cutting less weight? He looks a lot healthier. His face, he's not like looking like Skeletor. I've been looking at his camp. He's saying he's breaking mirrors in his house because of how scared he is of himself. And three, does Blachowicz at 40 years old have the chin to withstand that counter? I think all these fights start on the feet, and I think this is Pereira. I don't think Blachowicz is going to get him to the ground. I know that Blachowicz has the power to knock out Pereira, but I watched Glover Teixeira land that lead hook on him and stumble Blachowicz. If you're getting stumbled by a Glover Teixeira lead hook, that lead hook from Alex Pereira is going to send you into orbit, and that's what I'm betting on. At plus money.
Ooh. This also has potential to be fireworks. We've got legendary Polish power against the Poatan, and I honestly think that the Poatan is probably the pound-for-pound hardest hitter in the UFC.
I'd agree with that.
If Jan is smart He will immediately take it down to the ground. But, I always hear people after the fact say, well, the path was wrestling. It's not that easy when you get punched in the face. So I think if Alex can hit him with a short shot early, show him the pop that he's got, maybe scare him a little bit, I think this is Poatan's fight to lose, and he's the underdog. Are you kidding me? I'm betting Poatan. I don't think the line is juicy enough to bet him by KO, even by first round KO. So I'll just take him on the money line because he's the underdog, and I think he's going to roll.
Yeah, no, I'm completely there with you. I'm glad we're aligned on this one, because this one's got people split down the middle. Actually, most people that I've seen are on Blachowicz just because of that wrestling pedigree, because he's got the BJJ black belt. But I think people are sleeping on the fact that Alex Pereira isn't cutting weight. He's pound for pound one of the strongest guys in the UFC. Like, it's going to be a mission to take him down. And then while you're doing that, you're going to have to deal with elbows, knees, hooks. Getting inside on a much faster fighter is not easy to do. And the speed difference that is going to be on display with the hands is going to be astronomical. And it's going to favor Pereira. And I think Pereira starches Blachowicz in maybe the second round, right towards the beginning. Maybe Blachowicz gets a takedown towards the end of the first, starts feeling himself and starts to get a little more loose. And as soon as he loosens up, it is good night, Jim Kite.
Yeah, I think the people's mind want to go, like you mentioned earlier, it wants to go back to that Adesanya fight. They remember him controlling Adesanya on the ground and making it largely boring contest where Adesanya really couldn't do anything about it. I don't think that's going to happen to the Poatan personally. And is this going to be the healthiest we've ever seen Alex Pereira look? I mean, he's not cutting the weight that he was. I don't know how he ever got down to that weight. But this is probably going to be the healthiest he has ever been in a fight. I think that's key. I love this guy. I think that he is, in terms of personality-wise, he's everything Israel Adesanya wants to be. Adesanya tries a little too hard. Pereira does it effortlessly. He's a very good troll, and I think that I'm really interested to see what he does at the upper weight class, because I think he could be coming for that belt, and I think we might see another rematch with Israel Adesanya. I think that might be Izzy's path to win the light heavyweight belt.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and just a little future prediction on that one as well. I'm very excited to see the durability at 205, because Glover Teixeira was saying that he's walking around at 230 pounds. And again, one thing I just want to note, if he is training all the time, day in, day out with Glover Teixeira, you're gonna get some grappling chops eventually. Like, it's just, you're gonna learn a trick or two from a guy that has already submitted Blachowicz to win the belt at 205.
Without the hooks, then.
Without the hooks. It seems like it could be a perfect path to victory. At plus money, as you say, as the underdog, I'm all over Poatan. I think he goes head hunting on Saturday night. Now, we're on to the main event, the BMF belt, Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier. And I think it's going to be a growth thing. Justin Gaethje is not the guy that fought Dustin Poirier back in 2018. I think the leg kicks are going to be huge. And he's no longer the car crash and smash fighter. He calls it controlled chaos. And it served him well, right? Over the division's elite. And he's now knocked off Chandler. He knocked off Ferguson before anyone else did. And he put on a masterclass showing against Fiziev, won me a boatload of money as an underdog in that one. And he trains in Colorado. He trains at Elevation. Dustin Poirier is fighting out of Coconut Creek, Florida. That's a huge difference going into the latter rounds in this fight. Both these guys can take a punch. And I think that Poirier does have the boxing advantage, pure boxing in the pocket. But if Gaethje eats up that leg, hinders the mobility, hinders the power as he's transferring the weight from his legs to his hands, I think Justin Gaethje gets some revenge here and actually knocks out Dustin Poirier. And at plus money as the underdog, I'm taking Justin Gaethje and the power shots. And I just think he's going to blast that leg early, limit the movement, and then pick apart Poirier. And as long as he can avoid getting into the pocket with Poirier, I think this is a great spot for Justin Gaethje. You just cannot you can't let Poirier start landing those vicious combinations, which he finished Conor McGregor with.
On Tapology's greatest fights of all time, these two are combined for 5 of them. 5 of the top 25 of all time.
Yep, that makes sense.
This is a fight that diehards and casuals can get down on. They've had their eyes on ever since this was announced. The first fight was an absolute war and just a masterclass fight for all 5 fights. If you want to convince a friend to watch the UFC, that would be one of the fights that you would show to them, because it was just an incredible fight. Has there ever been a more appropriate nickname in the UFC than the Highlight for Justin Gaethje?
No,
you tell me one, I'll listen, but I don't know that I would. It's a perfect handle for him. I would say the edge in power definitely goes to Justin Gaethje. Like you mentioned earlier, I think that Poirier is the more technically sound and Poirier is one of the best boxers in all of the UFC, as far as I'm concerned. I see it being an absolute war, and I wish it was not happening in Salt Lake City, because I would love to be guaranteed 5 rounds of this. Not that it would ever be guaranteed, but I think we'd have a much better shot if this were in Sacramento or something like that, somewhere at sea level.
At sea level, yeah, exactly.
Give me sea level. I think that this could potentially turn into a sloppy mess if it goes long, if they do gas, which is a distinct possibility. A 5-round fight at altitude is asking a lot. We saw Kamaru Usman and Leon both pretty tired by the end of that. Like I said, I think that Leon was gassed immediately, and Kamaru really got tired there at the end. Now, I worry about that less with these fighters that I feel like have more money behind them, because they probably, they can do these training techniques or, sleep in the environment, I don't know, one of those tents
chambers.
Those one of those chambers
chambers that those mountain climbers sleep in before they go climb Kilimanjaro or whatnot.
I don't think Darius Flowers is sleeping in one of those. I think that you could potentially see Poirier and Gaethje sleeping in one of those, though. Gaethje's style has always been one that lends itself to being a darling of the fans. Doesn't necessarily bode well for long-term longevity. I think eventually that chin has to go, because everybody's does eventually, seemingly. I'm actually on the other side of you here. I love Dustin Poirier here.
Nice.
I love both fighters. These are 2 of my favorite fighters. I think they're pretty even. Like you said, Gaethje has really improved. I also think Poirier has really improved since the last time they fought. They have both just run through this division, with Charlie Olives being the one person that, really has their number.
Well, yeah, since they fought each other, I think they're both 6-2, and both their losses, they both lost to Khabib and Oliveira. That's it.
Does it
beat everybody else?
Yeah, and those are 2 very bad matchups for both of the guys. So not really that stunning that it went down that way. I do think that the longer this fight goes on, probably favors the Diamond as the more technically sound of the 2 fighters. But we'll see how long Gaethje's power can translate in altitude. Like you mentioned, he is training at altitude, so he'll be more equipped to handle this than Poirier. But I bet big on Poirier because I love the guy, man. I love the Diamond, and that's where I'm at on this one.
Yeah, I'm going. I got to stick with my guns with Justin Gaethje, and I love that we presented both sides of the argument. You have the technicality of the Poirier striking in the pocket, and I just think if Poirier gets him against the fence, Justin Gaethje's in big trouble. So Gaethje's got to just stay off that fence and really chew up that leg. I think he's got a Conor McGregor. What Dustin Poirier did to Conor McGregor's leg is what Justin Gaethje needs to do to Dustin Poirier's leg. In this matchup. And I also think that if Poirier tries to utilize those leg kicks, Gaethje's really good at getting out of the way. And he's got a long torso, short little legs, and I think that could lend a lot of lend a lot of strikes to Poirier's face and kind of roll with that. Now, Doc, is there a particular parlay or a best bet that you just want to touch on for everyone listening at home just before we get out of here?
For my best bet, I'm going to put down Tony Ferguson, money line. I'm betting him by decision, but I think a better bet is just him to win. I honestly really see it happening. I did not think I was going to get there, but I was watching this. Maybe it's a heart thing and not a head thing, but I convinced myself that Tony Ferguson money line is one of my best bets. As I mentioned earlier, Maverick and Cachuera fight does not go to decision. I love that too. I think this could be over early. I think Cachuera is going to be swinging for the fences, and she could catch her. But I think more than likely Maverick probably gets her down, and as you said, either clubs and subs her, or she might just TKO her. But I think that it ends before the cards for sure. So those would be my two best bets.
Absolutely love it. Well, we really appreciate you coming on, Doc. Just before we get out of here, let everyone know where they can find all your awesome content.
At Dr. Darce MMA on Twitter. And thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. I had a good time as always. And we'll be talking on Saturday. Let's go.
Oh yeah, we'll be going back and forth, folks. We'll get this episode chopped up and out for you ASAP. All of our official picks are on sportstree.ca. You can head over, get that pick package right now. We really appreciate Doc coming on. You can see all of his Twitter information on the bottom of the screen. We're going to add that on nicely, make it look sharp. Our boy Glenn is going to be all over it. Doc, thank you so much. Best of luck with your picks. And just before we go, let's go, Justin Gaethje.
Hey, I'll be fine if he wins. This is one of those ones where you kick back and just enjoy it, because these two have always been a treat. We won't see them for that much longer, so we've got to appreciate these two warriors while we still have the opportunity.
Exactly. No, it's one of those fights where it's tough. You don't want either of them to lose. I hate
all
that.
Win.
Yeah, everybody's a winner. I think this could be just an absolute banger. And one of these guys is going home with the new BMF belt. You guys let us know who in the comments who you think is going to walk away. Will it be Connor and Justin, or will it be the Doc and Dustin? Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. I'm Connor Roundtree. This was Sports Tree. That's Dr. Darce. And enjoy the fights.
Hey, check it. Put the place up.